So, Andrew, I realize we're coming toward the end of our hours here, and
we are. Absolutely.
I can't neglect to ask you this question. Is there what can Harris do? So I assume when people are hearing this, she's got something like 10 days left in this campaign. If you were advising the campaign, what could she do in these last 10 days that might matter?
I do think she has to, as she is doing, is highlight the danger of Trump. But I think, which is real and you shouldn't ignore, but I do think that if she was simply to say, I'm really going to try and get on top of illegal immigration. I really do want to end this in a way that had conviction. And I realize we screwed up. And I do think immigration is a very big issue, and have a little honesty and candor about it and her own regrets would be huge. And it would also be a break with Biden, which I think she also needs to make in some tangible way. And I don't see, if you're right, that she's a pragmatic person. And it certainly seems most Democrats would like there to be order at the border, at the very least. She couldn't be more emphatic and less cagey about this. She shouldn't be making a sort of meta point about the Langford bill when she could be saying, I realize we do need it, and I realize we've neglected it, and I apologize, and I want to make it good. But we will do it in a sane, humane, bipartisan way. He will do it ineffectively and dredging up horrific stories of splitting families and concentration camps and all the rest of it. She has to, I think, I will control illegal immigration. I understand it's an issue, and I will. And the other thing she should say is this, that his tariffs will make inflation much worse than it has ever been.
Yeah.
That if you were worried about inflation, we went through a bout which was mainly global, which was not primarily our fault, but we understand how. But if you thought that inflation was bad, you wait till the inflation that Trump will unleash with adding 60% to every, or 200% to every Chinese import. So you are going to get a calamity with immigration, which isn't going to work, and you're going to get inflation back. Whereas I am going to keep inflation away, and I'm going to cut illegal immigration in a way that will be much more effective and humane and within our traditional values. Those are the points that I would make. Inflation, immigration, Trump as a danger, and make it very potently, very powerfully in language that is not this awful opportunity economy, these horrible phrases she uses, these sentences that no one in normal life ever uses. She's got to say something refresh about herself. I got something wrong. She's got to show herself not to be this absolutely studied picture of sort of vagueness and of defensiveness. That's what I would say.
There's some talk about her going on Rogan's podcast. I haven't spoken to Joe, so I don't know if that's a thing or not. But do you think she should?
Something like that.
You think she should do that?
Yeah, I do. I think at this point he's winning, and I think she has to take a few risks. Yeah. And I think if she suddenly showed that backbone and made that choice, people would notice, and it would become the story in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Now, they would say, oh, she's Johnny-come-lately, she knows she's losing. But no, but she can still say it. And I don't know why they didn't do that from the get-go. I think because they were complacent, crazily, I think, complacent. And yeah, so that's what I would do. What would you say?
Yeah, well, I agree with all that. At this point, I would be tempted to tell her to just run the table on Sister Souljah moments. I mean, she could just stack 3 or 4 of them together on all the radioactive topics we've raised. I mean, I think the trans line keeps coming back to haunt her about favoring those taxpayer funded surgeries. I think she should just show that there's real distance between her and the activist class of the party.
She was actually asked, I think yesterday, about the trans stuff on an interview, and she will not defend it as such. She just says, well, we're following the law, right, whatever that means. No, stop this.
She can. It would be so simple for her to disavow what she said 4 years ago and prove that she's learned something in the interim, and that's not a bad thing. It would be so easy. And even with Biden, like she could step away from Biden's record by saying, listen, I think Joe Biden has been a great president. If I were if I if I had been in his shoes, I might have made many of the same mistakes with the same information. But hindsight allows me to say that our withdrawal from Afghanistan was bungled, right? And it's I think we should have left Afghanistan, but we shouldn't have left it that way. I mean, she could talk about anything and she'd be free. She just needs to frame it correctly, and people would understand that she's being candid and sane and showing that she has a capacity to course correct even when you get more information and all that information is bad, and she could do it on all of these issues. I mean, there's just I don't understand why she couldn't sound like you on these issues in this conversation, right? Like she could pivot all the way to your point of view and make sense of it.
I believe passionately in the rights of transgender people. I will defend them, but I also understand this is a controversial area among children, that we need to do no harm first, and we need to be cautious about this.
Yeah,
and I understand there are genuine concerns.
Yeah, and there's much that we don't understand, and it's not the same for boys and girls, and there is evidence of social contagion in one group when there's much less evidence in another group, and this is all fantastically complex, and yet we know the right answer is that we want people to have political equality, but do I think that people born male who went through a male puberty should be punching girls in the face and calling it sports? No, I don't think that, right? Like she could drop bombs and be sane and compassionate, and everyone would recognize that she's not a woke Manchurian candidate, and yet for some reason she has not done that.
On crime. She has this old record of being very tough on crime.
Exactly.
She could come up with some proposal that would be tough, that would more police officers on the street, was what Bill Clinton proposed.
Yeah. She could go after all the DAs who have basically made shoplifting a non-crime, right?